While the excitement for what Matas Buzelis can become in a Chicago Bulls uniform is exciting, and more people around the NBA, not just Bulls fandom, are starting to realize what Matas Buzelis can become. On today's episode, I want to talk about why it's time to not let our excitement about Matas Buzelis to become expectation yet. We're going to talk a little bit about that, plus a goal for Josh Giddey coming into the 2025-26 season, and Nikola Vucevic acquires a lot of rumors. We're going to get to all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to start off. I know we opened with the Matas Buzelis thing in the intro. We're going to get to that towards the end of the show. I want to start off talking about this thing with Josh Giddey. Listen, the Josh Giddey situation is what it is at this point in time. It seems like the Bulls and Josh Giddey are circling around an either 3-year deal or 4-year deal with a player option in the last year. And we're hearing more and more recently that it could be around $23 or $24 million per, which means that both the Bulls and Josh Giddey have come to an agreement to kind of both come off of their initial expectations there. And it is what it is. Like, we've talked about this situation a lot, almost every permutation when it comes down to it. Whatever you pay Josh Giddey, I think at this point, the years are the most important thing. Because even if you were to pay Josh Giddey what people would label as too much, and it's a 3-year deal, that then coincides with Matas Buzelis' contract extension. I think at that point in time, you're fine. Listen, I know this sucks to say, and I think people really need to realize this. Like, Josh Giddey's contract, regardless of what the size it is, it literally stops nothing for the Chicago Bulls. And that's been one thing that I've said. Now, I know people have the mindset of, well, we need to make sure that we sign this contract to where it's tradable later. Or Zach LaVine. The situations are nothing similar. I've talked about these ad nauseum. And I think when it really comes down to it, it's this. The years are kind of the most important thing because if Matas ends up turning into what people think that he can turn into, and we'll get into that a little bit more, if he turns into that, then when his extension comes up, it could drastically change what you need around that player because then you could be building around him, right? And it, again, could be, right? So, having that contract coincide with the time that Matas Buzelis' contract comes up is the thing when it comes down to that. And, we'll see. Casey Johnson came out and said that the Bulls did make a long-term offer to Josh Giddey around that $20 million mark, and that, Josh Giddey's representation is still holding on to that $30 million. Now, Casey did say that something could be done by September. And it keeps getting pushed, right? We heard a couple of, before August started that it was expected that it would be by the end of August. Now we're at the 20th of August, and now it's like, now Casey Johnson saying maybe sometime around September. The deadline is October 1st. And, yes, things get done when you're closer to a deadline, especially when you're disagreeing. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I think, the money is not the thing. The Bulls are not going to be a free agent destination for the next 3 years. There's not going to be a single big name free agent or key free agent that's going to come to the Chicago Bulls in the next 3 years. We're in too weird of a place with our roster and too much uncertainty as well with our roster. We ain't accomplished nothing. Now, the Bulls outwardly making the playoffs next year maybe could change a little bit of that. If Matas hits his ceiling, not ceiling, but progresses, right, or makes a leap sooner rather than later, that could change that. But again, it's very unlikely. And so regardless of what you pay Giddey in that time period, it is what it is. And people got to stop talking about Josh Giddey like he's some horrible player that it's like we're settling on playing like that. That's not right either. And also, anybody who's still saying, and I want everybody to listen to the sound of my voice in this one. Anybody, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's my mama. I don't care if it's your mama. I don't give a damn if it's Michael Jordan himself. If anybody is saying, oh my God, the Bulls can't pay him over on an only 20-game sample size, you're a fucking idiot. I'm just going to be 100% frank with you. If you think that the Bulls, in signing Josh Giddey, are just looking at a 20-game stretch, you're stupid. So let me just frame this for a second, right? When you pay a free agent that hasn't been on your team, what are you basing it off of? You're basing it off of what they've done in their NBA career. You're basing it off what you see for them going forward. You're basing them off the role that you see them and how you see them playing and fitting for your team. You're not basing it off a stretch. And the same thing goes with your own free agents. The AK is stupid, but he's not as stupid as some of y'all. He's not coming into this only basing it off 20-game sample size. He's basing it off what Josh Giddey has done in the past. And no, it was not all horrible that people keep trying to act like his whole OKC run was horrible. It was not. It ended on a bad playoff series, and he very rarely played the role that the Bulls are going to have him playing. But at the same time, you're not basing off that. You have scouts. You have analytics for a reason. You have things that you're looking at in what Josh Giddey has done, how you see that role fitting, what you're going to ask of him, and how well you feel like he can fill into that. That's what you're paying a player for. If you think an NBA team is not looking at every bit of the data, look at the data that I give you guys as far as Josh Giddey being the 98th percentile as far as open shots generated for his teammates. The fact that even in that playoff series that ended with the OKC Thunder, he generated open shots for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and for Jalen Williams, and they hit it at 26 and 27% on wide open threes collectively. Now, Josh Giddey also, some of the negative. In the half court, sometimes he fails. The defense, they're looking at all of that. Just like you guys are forming your opinion on Josh Giddey more than just in 20 games, the Chicago Bulls and no NBA team are looking at just 20 games worth of data to sign a player. That's stupid. It's dumb. And so that's again, fan speak versus actual speak of what NBA teams are doing. They're basing it off everything. They're also in part basing it off of what they see Josh Giddey's role. Now, for the flip side of that, for the fans are like, oh my God, well, Josh Giddey, he was in the triple doubles. The points, assists, and rebounds. It was only with Jokic and LeBron. The Bulls should just be giving them everything that they want. You don't understand the fact of negotiation. The fact of the matter is, the Bulls, and I know they have not done it very oftenly, are actually using the market and the fact that they could get a player for a more friendly contract. They are actually finally using actual negotiation tactics, and they're not the only ones. If you look at how the restricted free agents, the better restricted free agents are doing. Hell, the Nets have Cam Thomas, who at the bare minimum is a scorer in this league. Scorers get paid, and reportedly are offering $14 million. So the teams are using the market. And I think with the combination of where the salary cap structure is, the teams are using the market. That is what it is. I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong for the Josh Giddey stance. You're wrong to feel like Josh Giddey should get paid whatever. At this point, it's past that. Everybody's going to feel the way that they feel. But if you don't understand negotiations and how that works, now, could it blow up in the Bulls' face? And using this negotiation ploy, could they have turned away Josh Giddey long term? We shall see. That's a possibility too. But they have actually used the market to deal with it. And, we'll see how that works out for him. But let's start off this segment to talk about a goal for Josh Giddey. So Josh Giddey last season had a huge number of triple doubles that really played a big role into what Josh Giddey was at the end of that season for the Chicago Bulls and how. When you look at Josh Giddey's post All-Star break, he had a prior to the Zach LaVine trade, he had a 20% usage rate. That went up to a 24.5% usage rate after the All-Star break, which really kind of led itself to Josh Giddey being more like himself and more like the player that he says he's going to be. When you look at it, he recorded 5 of his 7 triple-doubles from February 20 onward, and 5 of those triple-doubles were in only 19 appearances. If you look at it, Josh Giddey realistically could have 22 triple-doubles this upcoming year, which would be 12 short of what Jokic had in the past, right? And the thing is that the role that Josh Giddey is going to have here is the primary playmaker. And I think people have confused what a usage rate brings. Like, him being the primary playmaker doesn't always mean that it has to end on him scoring. The primary playmaker for the Bulls in a season where Matas is growing, Coby White and Josh Giddey have learned their thing. We already know that Josh Giddey can feed the big man in Nikola Vucevic. I already told you guys most of Josh Giddey's assists throughout the season went to Nikola Vucevic because he gets the big man involved. And I think his rebounding, we already know the rebounding is legit. Not Nikola Vucevic. Woo! Josh Giddey could very well be towards the top of the league in triple doubles this upcoming year. And I think that is a really good goal for Josh Giddey, is that to be that, but impact all those areas of the basketball as far as, the offensive side of the ball. Now, defensively, we talked about how Josh Giddey did grow defensively last year. I want to see that kind of focus and that new kind of effort that he gave on defense to end last season. I want to see that maintained for a full season for Josh Giddey. And I think that he's capable of doing that for sure. But I think that's a really good goal for Josh Giddey. be towards the top of the league in triple doubles. This is going to be the first season where Josh Giddey is going to be the primary playmaker to start off a season on any team that he's been, and should maintain that role throughout the entirety of the season. That is a really good goal for Josh Giddey, and I think that should be able to maintain for him as well, and we'll see if Josh Giddey can do that. Let's move on to the next topic. Nikola Vucevic called out rumors yesterday, and it was good to see the interview that he had. He said this: a week ago, the Bulls GM, who had called me after all the rumors, confirmed that nothing was true and that everything we had discussed after the season still stood. I already knew that, but it's always nice when your GM calls to tell you. There are always rumors. Most of them are false, but it's a bit of nonsense. For example, the buyout story was misunderstood in Europe. The journalist wrote that if there were no trade during the season, there might be a buyout option before the deadline. I know how the business works. In the last year of the contract, there's always speculation. Since I can't control that, I try not to stress over it. Yes, I have almost no doubt that that's the mindset I'm preparing with. After that, we'll see. I don't know what will happen. And so here's the thing. We talked about when that happened. When the buyout thing happened, it was literally Jake Fisher, who was live on Bleacher Report, saying, hey, at this point, a buyout's more likely than a trade. People took that as, oh my God, they're going to buy out Nikola Vucevic. That's not what he said. He used it to, people don't understand words and comprehensive. It's bad, right? Because it was more so to highlight how unlikely a trade was, not to say that a buyout was likely. But, it is what it is. It was aggregated. That happens at times too. People take it, they run with it, and it is what it is. Fact of the matter is this. I've said this multiple times too. Until the Bulls have either a new starting center or a center in the wings that they are developing, Nikola Vucevic is going to be here. I've told you guys as well. I believe that there is still even a chance, depending on how the market dictates and where Nikola Vucevic's mindset is, that Vuce could be extended at some point this season. That is still on the table. I get it where people have their problems with Vooch. Make no mistake about it. But I think some of that is kind of also overblown. Vooch was the most consistent Bull last year. If you go and look at it, Vooch was one of the most important Bulls in wins last year. There's been problems with Vooch over his career here with the Bulls. Make no mistake about it. I think a lot of this, people have not updated their stance on Vooch because a lot of people don't watch actual basketball games. They let what the social media speak. They go and try to look at the box score, and because Vucevic's stat line has basically been the same most of the time here with the Bulls, they think that means that the impact's the same, and it's really not. We saw a much more refined Nikola Vucevic last year. We saw a much more intentional Nikola Vucevic last year, and a Vuce who actually hit some big shots for the Chicago Bulls. Now, defensively, Vuce is always going to be Vuce. No doubt about that. There's always going to be problems that you can have with Nikola Vucevic's defense. He's just not a good defender. And then on top of it, when we have weak perimeter defense and pick and roll defense like the Chicago Bulls have so oftenly over the last few years, it's not going to put Nikola Vucevic in a better situation. It's just not. And that's what we've seen here with Vuce. Now, the fact of the matter is two things can be true. Vuce isn't necessarily the biggest problem with the Chicago Bulls, but again, there are ways that you could upgrade that position in a stylistic sense and in a playmaking sense, and you get better production out of your center position. That's definitely something that's a possibility there. And so that's where the Bulls have to look at as they look to move the center position. But but for the people that are like, oh, well, Zach Collins can just start. He had a solid stretch, but go and look at Zach Collins' full time here with the Bulls. It was kind of up and down, right? And so I can understand this front office looking at it and saying, well, if we're going to give up Vooch, which is cool. Like, we know that they've been shopping him. We do know that he's available. Those things are still there. Even Vooch saying, hey, Mark Eversley said that the things we talked about at the end of the season are still true. I personally take that as if they can find a way to move Vooch, because Vooch does want to contend over the last part of his career, that they'll find a way to get that done. And so we shall see if that ends up being the case here, and if they do that with Vooch. And I think that's the thing that overall comes down to with Nikola Vucevic is just the Bulls are going to try to find their deal for Vooch. And if not, I can see a Lonzo Ball situation happening here. By a Lonzo Ball situation, I mean the fact that the Bulls tried to find a trade for Lonzo at the trade deadline. They actually found one that they didn't like, so they extended him, and then it made it easier to move him in the offseason because teams didn't have the back thing that they could say, well, he's a free agent at the end of the year. We can wait to negotiate with that rather than try to give up what the Bulls want. I think that that's still an option on the table for the Bulls. And when it comes down to it, Vooch, we'll see where it goes, man. Listen, Vooch isn't the biggest thing hurting this team right now. There's a lot of defensive problems on this team. And again, that's not to say that a different type of center can't help the Chicago Bulls more, especially defensively. I'm not saying that either. But it's not as simple as just going to walk into Walmart and pulling that type of center off the shelf, and then you have that center now in your building. So the Bulls have to think about all of that when they're going through it, and we'll see what the future holds for Nikola Vucevic. But 18 and a half, 10 points. He was 44th overall in the league in scoring, 10th in rebounding last year, 13th in field goal shooting percentage. I tell you what, especially with Josh Giddey and his half-court creation, I'm not mad at Nikola Vucevic being here to start off the season. We do need to find the center of the future. We need to find that rim protecting, running, more in transition center. We need to find that guy, because that guy with Coby, with Giddey, hell, even with Matas, would be so important for this team potentially. We got to find that guy, but it's not as simple as just going out there and walking into the market and getting that and pulling it off the shelf. So until that time happens, Vooch is probably going to be a Chicago Bull. And hey, we just got to feel with that. How are we going to feel with it? All right, that transitions us to the last topic of today's episode. And I wanted to talk about this: expectation versus reality for Matas Buzelis. Like, Matas is one of the most exciting players that we've had here as a rookie quite a while for the Chicago Bulls. And while the season averages weren't necessarily the best, when you look at the time and the numbers that he put up as a starter, they are very encouraging. His numbers as a starter last season were almost better than any stretch that we had at Patrick Williams as the starting power forward. So, of course, there's reasons to be excited. For those that don't know those numbers, as a starter last year, 13 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 1.1 blocks, 2 assists basically per game, only 1.5 turnovers. He did that on 47% shooting from the field and 34% shooting from three-point range. Really solid numbers when it came down to that for Matas Buzelis, and that was really good to see. That was 31 games as a starter. His post-All-Star break numbers were even better. 27 games started in that time. He shot 36% from three, still the same 13 points per game, but the numbers from three were higher. 5 rebounds per game, still the 1.1 blocks, almost a steal per game, and the turnovers were a little bit lower too. So Matas is a player that has tons of potential. And what I wanted this segment to be is that I need everybody to still realize that I get it. Matas has been all over everywhere. The Bulls have been promoting him. The NBA used him as one of their correspondents during the NBA Finals. You're seeing Matas Buzelis' face more and more, and it's deserved. And I think that says a lot about how people view what Matas can become. But the one thing that I want to be clear here is that I don't want the excitement over Matas to become expectation from fans. And then if Matas doesn't make this crazy leap in year 2, people are disappointed or all of a sudden start turning on what they feel Matas Buzelis can become. That potential is still there. And I hope that we're talking about a Matas Buzelis that I go back and say, hey, I know I said temper your expectations for his sophomore year, but Matas Buzelis is balling. I would love nothing more than to be able to say that about Matas. But when you look at it, usually, even especially when a player didn't start full time, their rookie year, coming into their second year, it's kind of more of a refinement of certain things and an adaptation of certain things. Now, we've seen players take big leaps in their second year. Lauri Markkanen was one of those players as well who had a pretty big year in his second year, but then we saw how that went, right? So I think with Matas Buzelis, and not even to compare him to Lauri Markkanen as a player, because I think they're very different players. But Lauri was basically the Bulls' offense. Keep in mind, there was no Zach LaVine most of Lauri Markkanen's rookie year where he had 15 points per game. He then went up to 18 points per game before dropping down to 14 in his third year and 13 in his fourth year before eventually moving on to Cleveland, right? Now, I don't think that Matas is going to make that leap to go up to 18 points per game, but I do think that Lauri's rookie year could be something that you look at for Matas' second year. The 15 points per game, the 7 rebounds, he's not nearly the rim protector that Matas was. So I think that a fair mark for Matas is around 15 points per game, around 6 or 7 rebounds, around 1.5 blocks. If you can get that up to 2, great. It'll put him towards the top of the league, but around 1.5 blocks. And I think getting the turnovers down to 1 to less than 1 per game would be really big for Matas Buzelis. A lot of it also depends on what his role in this offense is going to be. Is Billy Donovan going to use him and give him more isolation opportunities? Is he going to run more plays for Matas? One of the things with Matas that was really impressive is that Billy Donovan didn't all of a sudden run more plays for Matas Buzelis than what he did, for example, for Patrick Williams when Patrick was starting. No, Matas thrived off being more active, the players getting him the ball because he was cutting to the rim, he was doing those type of things, him being in attack mode more. Those are things that really help Matas kind of stand out and have a larger role and larger impact for the Bulls, even despite not getting a ton of shots called for him. And that's where Matas can really thrive at. The putbacks, the attacking the rim, the follow-up, the things that we've talked so much about that we wanted to see Patrick Williams do, Matas has that more naturally, and there's a lot of reason to believe that Matas is going to be able to do that. Only 10 shots per game for Matas last year as a starter. around the same thing that Patrick Williams was getting. I can see a realistic world in which that goes up to maybe 13, maybe 14 shots per game. And if that happens, great for him. And that's the thing. I just don't want people to paint this now picture for Matas and they become disappointed when he doesn't have 16, 17, 18 points per game. I don't want that to happen because Matas is still the talent that we see that he could be. He is still very much that, and that's not going to change anytime soon. But the expectation, let it come naturally. And I think that's what the Bulls, and especially with having guards like Josh Giddey, guards like Tre Jones, the assist to turnover ratios for those, well, especially for Tre Jones, but the way that Josh is able to operate the half-court offense, these are all things that are going to benefit Matas Buzelis as he's learning to create his own shot, as those things happen. And that could put Matas in a really good position. Expectation over excitement. We got to start realizing where that is. And this is one thing that me and Pat, for example, over on Locked on Bulls, that we kind of differ on. Pat thinks in year 2, it's all going to be turned over to Matas, or could be. I'm more of I think like knowing Billy Donovan, I think it's going to be a trickle effect. I do think more responsibility is definitely going to be put on Matas Buzelis, but I don't think it's going to be some crazy responsibility where he's going to pass up Coby. Vooch is still on this team. Vooch is still going to get his shots. Josh Giddey's still going to have his opportunities. And I think that is going to be one of those things where, much like we saw at the beginning of Matas' rookie year, where Billy Donovan was giving him certain things and seeing how he deals with it, we're going to be seeing that, but on a grander scale for Matas Buzelis as a starter. And by the end of the season, I could very well see maybe the last 2 months of the season, maybe that's where Matas averages 18 points per game over those last 2 months. But over the full course of the season, I do think it's going to be a more trickle effect for Matas. I think that's perfectly fine as well. But I know that, like, listen, be all the excitement in the world for Matas, but let's be reasonable in our expectations for him in year 2. But Matas is the Bulls' best opportunity to really turn into that star, and we'll see what happens there. So overall, you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.